Good evening, everyone. We're about to start this meeting of the Sumner County Board of Education for November 16th, 2021. Before we do, I'm going to stand for a moment of silence and follow that by the Pledge of Allegiance to our country's flag. Anyone who would like to join me, please feel free to do so. Please join me in the pledge. All righty, we've been called to order. Mr. Johnson, you do have the roll, I guess?
Yes, sir.
All righty, thank you, sir. First item on the agenda is adoption of the regular agenda. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion approved by Mr. Wise.
Second.
Second by Mr. Wilferson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. We have an agenda. Next item on the agenda is the adoption of the consent agenda. Is there a
Motion to approve.
motion from Ms. Hayes, second by Mr. Daniels. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is consideration of the minutes, discussion, interaction regarding the minutes of the October 19th meeting.
Motion to approve.
Motion approved by Ms. Bachman,
Second.
second by Ms. Hayes. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is hearing of delegations. We have two that signed up. We'll start with Ms. Joanna Daniels. You'll have 5 minutes to speak on the grading system, code number 4.6. And please state your name and address for the record.
Sure. All right, Joanna Daniels, and 152 North Shadow Haven Way, Hendersonville, Tennessee, 37075. That's all you asked for, right? His name and address? Okay. Okay, so I was looking over this, and one, I was a little confused because the first one that was on there, it says first reading, but then it says first reading, this was adopted on July 21st and last revised October 20th. That said first reading, but they're two different documents. And so I'm a little confused as to when this was originally adopted, 4.6. And then also just trying to understand why is it that we're only changing the high school and what's going on with the high school grades and not changing anybody else's grades. So I was a little confused on that. So I'm trying to find out why only high school. How does this changing of the grades benefit the students? How is it going to benefit Sumner County? And why this sudden change? And then, and does this impact EL kids or diverse learners? And then also, what is, sorry, I had all this written down and wouldn't print it out. So is this what's the accountability formula that is making you guys change the grading here as well? And so that's all my questions for why are we changing the grading. And then also I noticed on here that you guys changed the 21st century standards, century study skills and behavior. On one, it doesn't have the definition of 1, 2, 3, but on the other one, it has a definition of 1, 2, 3, but that wasn't highlighted. So is that a change that you're making? Or was it just you guys messed up and forgot to highlight it? And then also, the 21st, I'm finding out about the 21st century study skills and and behavior. And I have to say that I'm a little bit concerned about that and what it actually does. And so read this here real quick, and it made me a little concerned about it's about flexibility and adaptability, global and cultural awareness, information literacy, leadership, civic literacy and citizenship, oral and written communication skills, social responsibility and ethics, technology literacy and initiative. And so I'm trying to figure out where the social responsibility and ethics comes in the grading of 1, 2, and 3, with the kindergarten, in the elementary schools, and then the global and cultural awareness. I'd like to find out where that's coming in and why kids in elementary school are getting graded on that. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Daniels. Next is Katie Doherty. Hope I'm saying that right. Ms. Doherty, if you would just, you have 5 minutes to speak on the rezoning, and please state your name and address for the record.
All right, so my name is Katie Doherty, and I live at 319 Stratford Park Boulevard. I'm here because I have 3 young boys. 2 attend Howard right now, and 1 is in the portable this year and would be in the portable next year if this change is made. I'm here tonight because of the proposed rezoning for Stratford Park subdivision for Liberty Park schools, and I'm asking that the boundary for the schools stay as originally planned and presented to the public so that my boys will attend the new school next year. One of the reasons we purchased this home in the subdivision 2 years ago was because the boundary then was set for our children to attend the new school when it opens. Our family has watched the new school building built and are already excited about the change next year. I hold a degree in education from Eastern Michigan University, and although there are a few studies on the impact of learning in portable classrooms, I know there are other studies of overcrowding within a classroom. I know from my oldest that he feels safer and more focused when he is in a smaller size classroom that is in a brick and mortar building. And as a child with ADHD, he has great progress since attending school in Gallatin. And I don't want him to lose that by having him to learn in an overcrowded portable classroom next year. I'm asking that the original boundaries stay the same so that these children can move up as a class together. If you all decide to move ahead with this change, will parents in our subdivision who want their children to attend the new school be able to apply to go to that school or grandfathered into that school, or will you hold the boundary tight for the first year to come? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Doherty. Next item on the agenda is matters involving council. We have none. And the next item after that is reports from the director. Dr.
All
Lewis.
right, good to see all of you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Yeah, we're here. So I know we're all looking forward to the start of the holiday season. It kind of kicks it off. I don't know if you guys have participated or not, but we were able to do Thanksgiving lunches, which is really popular with our parents. And so as I've moved around the county, especially last week, if you were at any elementary school, basically, around 10:30 all the way through the lunch period, you saw lots of parents and folks. And so it's good that we're able to get that going again. That's something that we've always done here in Sumner County, and then we had to stop, and now we're able to start it back, and that feels good. And I think we had a huge response, just like we have everything that our parents have been able to come back to campus to do this year. People are eager to get back involved, and that's a great thing for us. And we always want our parents on our school campuses, in our buildings, and seeing all the great things that our teachers and students are doing. So just wanted you to know that. I'm also going to hand out, I think this is a little earlier than any other year, and probably that I can remember, maybe in my 11 years here, but graduation dates. So we're going to hand these out to you, and then I think Mr. Langford will probably send these out, and then we'll get these posted to the individual principals will post them for their school, but then we'll also get the list out on the district website. And this is something that you guys always want, and I think this is earlier than we've had any other year. So I think that's a good thing too. Thank you to Mr. Langford and his group and his team to get these dates set and the locations, if they're off campus, arranged and secured. And we're looking forward already to a great graduation season in May of 22. That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips. All right, moving down the list. Next item on the agenda is discussion and interaction regarding final zoning for Liberty Creek Schools. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion approved by Mr. Daniels. We'll take second by Mr. Duncan. Any discussion? Ms. Hawkins.
Yes, I wanted to address this whole situation. My district especially, I think, is impacted by the changes with Gallatin High School and all the station camp schools, Howard Elementary, Rucker Stewart. And I actually, there are several points I want to make. Number one, I got some emails from people saying, we were told by our realtor that this is where our children were going to go to school. And that's very unfortunate that a realtor would say that, because school zone lines are not drawn in permanent marker. They are always up for reconsideration depending on population and growth. So it can change. Each year it can change, and especially with the growth we're seeing in this area, it very well could. Second, I wanted to say, as far as Howard Elementary's crowding situation, in looking at the zone that Howard is now, there's a huge amount of zone up above 109 to the west of 109 that is going to Liberty Creek. That's a lot of the population that will take some of the strain off of Howard, allowing them to get out of the portables, we hope. I also wanted to address, I actually got curious about the growth in my district. So I went down to City Hall and asked them about what's being built in my district. And they pointed me to the website, GallatinTN.gov, to go to departments and then go to planning. And under planning, you find new developments. And I have to say, I was pretty surprised at the number of developments that are under construction. They aren't even occupied yet. And I actually, numbers guy, I'm a numbers guy too. And I crunch the numbers. And to make a long story short, I found that under construction right now, or in final approval stages, Station Camp High School, middle school, and elementary school, under construction, 4,359 units, plus 152 units just for the high school. Not that they're going, the others are going to Rutgers Stewart and Howard. Gallatin High School, 209, well, the total in my district, which affects the Gallatin High School, Station Camp campus, Howard, 6,853 units under construction right now. These are families, people who are going to be flooding our schools in the next year or two. So, Dr. Phillips, when I asked you at the study session about what are we going to do about the growth, and are these lines that we're drawing today, how is that going to handle what's coming? And you said that we're probably going to have to look at this again. And I see that one of the principals, I met with every single principal in my district in the last week and talked with them about that. And one said, you know what, we're dealing with a moving target. We can't aim at what we see at this moment. And I see you looking 2 years down the road at what it's going to be. And that's why I feel for the people who want to be zoned to Liberty Creek, but in looking at these numbers, they're going to go to Liberty Creek for 1 or 2 years and then they're going to get transferred back. And that's going to be hard on the children. And that's why I have to look at the big picture, and I have to look at my whole district in order to get an understanding for what the path forward in all of this.
Yep. Mr. Chairman, you.
I think Ms. Hawkins, yeah, Mr.
So you're exactly right. And we, I think, try to do our best to predict that moving target. But just in what you referenced to housing, especially in the areas that we've continued to talk about, which are from Big Station back into Gallatin, between 31 and Red River Road, Long Hollow Pike. That whole area is where all of those units that you just mentioned are for the most part located. Mm-hmm. And as all of you know, for years, as we've had discussions about zoning, and we've made some zoning changes they're all very difficult because you never want to do that. You never want to have to change students from one building to another. You don't want to have to necessarily change staffing from one building to a new building. But it's necessary as you try to manage how that population comes to you. So I appreciate you saying that. You're 100% correct. I would like to go over, and I'm going to try to do this so we can kind of refresh our memories a little bit, but I think it was helpful for me, and so I thought it may be helpful for you, and it kind of reinforces what you're saying in a little bit more detail with Station Camp and Howard. If you guys will take this sheet that I just handed out, and if you'll look at that, if from the bottom to the top, those are that's the last 4 school years, three school years, and then the first three months of this year. And these numbers come from, you guys know I watch the numbers all the time. And, as we report daily and then once a month to the state for attendance, these are the numbers that I use when I look at not only staffing, but other ways that we allocate resources out to campuses. So, and zoning, obviously. So if you look at these, what I'd like to do is just start down at the first month of 18-19, okay? And let's just take them individually. When you look at Howard, the first month of 2018, August of that year, 18-19 school year, we were at 555. That's what we reported as an average for that month at Howard. If you look all the way to the end of that, you see that Howard basically grew more within that year than they have in any of the preceding 7. Now, what happened in that year? Apartments opened at the corner, right by Howard, right? The year preceding that, do you guys remember that we moved portables in there in the summer to prep for this? So as those apartments opened, and we knew there would be more students there, so we planned for that, you see that we went up on the 9th month of that year, which is somewhat odd to grow late in the year, April, May. You see that we actually hit a peak in the 7th month, 585 of that year. The following year, we kind of were about 567, 565, 570, 1 month at 580. And then pandemic year came through, went 516 to 535, and now we're at about 558. I say all that to say what happened in that bump happened, and then we kind of settled out. We haven't seen any more substantial growth there in that footprint. And so it kind of panned out to this point like we thought it would when we looked at it back in 2018. Also remember that, as Ms. Hawkins mentioned earlier, we're going to have around 50 or so, 55 students that are still going to be zoned to Liberty Creek Elementary that are currently Howard. So when we get to August, when we get to first month of next year, we will be lower at Howard. It's my prediction. We'll be lower in student enrollment at Howard than we have been in the last 8 years. Okay? So I feel good about that. I think that's about as predictable as we can get. Okay? May not solve all the issues or questions, and certainly probably doesn't looking forward, but I think that's where we were intending to be, and I think that's good. On the other side of the situation, look at Station Camp Elementary. First month of 2018, 1,026 students. Look what happened at Station Camp at the end of that year, 1,069. Okay? We know that that's one of the highest growth curve areas in school campuses across within the county. 1920, we started out with 949. What happened that year? Right, it was rezoned. Okay. We actually wound up taking more than that out, if you remember correctly, and that was very painful to do. But we did that because we knew with that growth curve at Station Camp Elementary, we would not be able to accommodate the new growth plus those students that we were rezoning. Do y'all remember that conversation? I was like, the fire marshal won't even let you have school. And they're going to come shut you down one day. It won't be any school happening. So we went back to 950. We grew throughout that year to 983 on month 9. Okay. The next August, 996 to 1,017, and then currently we're at 1,065 this month. So the flip side of that, you already have rezoning once to cut the number down. You're already larger than you were when you did the split the last time on rezone, right? Consistent growth every year. What happens every year? Never misses. May differ a little in number, it never misses. You're going to go up every year there because of new housing, new units as they come online, families that move in. So it's consistent with what we planned to happen. I think this helped me understand, and kind of when I heard those questions, I kind of thought, well, I need to see it on paper. I need to see the actual number and how that flow occurred, because when I talk about it, sometimes I start spitting out numbers, and if you don't see them on paper, you kind of lose track. But those two campuses have worked out about like we predicted with a moving target that they would several years ago. One thing to think about with Howard, not only Howard, but probably other schools, not only within the city of Gallatin, but also possibly all the way back into Beach Complex. Over the course of the next 2 or 3 years, we could have multiple schools lines moved, rezoning to accommodate where we have space and seats. So I just prep you for that. I'm not saying it's coming next year or the next, but we do know, or at least I think, that will be something that we will have to tackle. And when we do that next step, it very well could include 6 or 7, 8 schools. It could be. I think 2 years ago, maybe Rutherford County changed every school zone in their county. The entire school district, every zone changed. I'm not saying we're doing that, but I do think the next one will include a lot of school zone changes to make some accommodations.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips. Mr. Daniels?
Yeah, just a couple of questions. You look at the numbers, one of the reasons that we adjusted the boundaries was because of Creekside. How many students are in Creekside that we need to make sure go to the new campus?
Well, in Creekside alone, and of course, when we look at Station Camp as a complex, the high school has more available capacities than currently than elementary or middle school. But if you look just at Creekside, there are around 500 students in Creekside. And about 225 of those are elementary students.
And I asked that because I remember when we did the zoning a couple of years ago, and we created the initial shift, and then we created the proposed boundaries, one of the comments that was made was that these may change based on growth, specifically in the Creekside area.
Yep.
And because of that growth, that was one of the reasons that we need to make the shift. One of the comments was about, students moving schools together. The students that are in Stafford Park and that are in the Cambridge Farms area that will be still at Howard Elementary, that group that's in those neighborhoods and those communities, they will go to Liberty Creek Middle School and High School together. So
That's
it's
correct.
not like they're going to be split up or
Yeah.
splintered off.
Yeah, which is I think probably currently, if you look back, and I haven't done this for a long, long time, but I know during my time here, we probably have cleaner feeder patterns through our middle schools, less middle schools split than we've probably ever had. So, we may see in the future, like we're doing with Howard, where we have elementary that's a split feeder to two different middle school and then high school campuses. Because that may be the best way to manage that.
And
But you try to do it by neighborhoods, like you're mentioning, where you have geographic areas that all of those students typically know each other, ride the bus together, do things in the neighborhood together, and then they would all go to the same feeder pattern.
And speaking of feeder patterns, that's kind of the last question. I think you commented on this in our study session a couple weeks ago. But one of the challenges with the feeder patterns right now at Rucker in particular is that there are students at Rucker that go to Station Camp and there are students at Rucker that go to Gallatin. And I've been asked this question, and what I said was it's my understanding that the zoning will clean up that feeder pattern where students at Rucker go to Gallatin High School. And students that obviously Schaefer go to Gallatin High School. There aren't any students, or there are very few students right now, based on the zoning recommendations, that will go Rucker Station Camp. Station Camp Elementary will go to straight into Station Camp Middle, and Rucker students will feed back into Gallatin.
That's true.
Okay.
That's correct. Yeah.
All right.
It does clean that up, and it helps us in that regard. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels. Ms. Hawkins?
Yes, I meant to also say, in making decisions about where to draw this line, is to keep in consideration that the numbers I quoted don't include anything going on in the Liberty Creek zone. So it's all Gallatin. I've weeded out anything that was not in my district so that these numbers represent my district and what we're expecting. But if Liberty Creek zone is going to be anything like Station Camp, which it will, when Station Camp complex was completed, it was countryside. There were very few homes out that way. And now you take a look and there are apartments, townhomes, condos, individual homes. And that is going to happen at Liberty Creek. And so we can't, another reason that taking neighborhoods and taking them to Liberty Creek, and then suddenly we have all this boom of all these apartments and townhomes at around Liberty Creek, then these people have to go back. And so I just wanted to clarify that the numbers I'm talking about now don't even include what is going to be happening in the Liberty Creek school zone.
And I think that's a great point that, if you overcrowd on the front end, I would say, Liberty Creek and not leave enough room for that natural growth that's going to occur pretty quickly in that pattern, then obviously you're going to have some very upset people when you have to move people out that are there. So, here in this situation, we're leaving students in Howard that are at Howard now. So we're just trying to eliminate the chance that that would occur down the road, which I think, if you look at the numbers, we would all agree that that would happen.
Thank you, Ms. Hawkins. Mr. Gregory?
Mr. Chairman, if you'll allow me, I'll direct this question to Ms. Hawkins. Give me the numbers again that you mentioned of the building permits in the station camp zone.
May I speak? These aren't just permits, these are under construction and have final approval.
Oh, okay.
For Station Camp High School, middle school, and elementary school, there are going to be about 4,500 units that are going to be completed within the next year or two. Many are already under construction in various phases. And that's just the Station Camp zone.
Right.
I've got, for Gallatin High School, I've got 295 units plus a 384 acres mixed use that they don't tell how many, but it's going to have residential. It's 384 acres. It's going to be developed.
300.
384 acres. And that's called the Meadows. Zoned for Gallatin High School and Rucker Stewart, I've got 1,056 units under construction. And I've kind of had to break them out because some have Gallatin, Rucker, and then either go to Howard or so I've tried to just break it down. But Gallatin High School, Rucker Stewart, and Howard Elementary cluster, there's 729 units. Plus a residential development on 20 acres. There's several in this list that don't tell how many units they're going to build, but you can go and verify my numbers on the website. Actually, it even has a map that shows where each one of these under construction are located. And I've talked with each of the principals, and my school's talking about, okay, here we go. What are we going to do? And so, and I assured them that from our study session 2 weeks ago, we talked about the growth and that we would have to go back and look at our zoning boundaries to address this.
Thank you, Ms. Hawkins. Is that all, Mr. Gregory?
Yes, excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Gregory. Ms. Andrews?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. I know one of the things, we look all the way back to 2012, portables and so forth were a big deal. And, I feel like we've done a great job as far as pretty much eliminating them. Howard is one of the few schools that does have portables still at it, obviously, as we've heard from a parent this evening. And I understand that concern. Obviously, those are conversations that we've had numerous times as far as, children learning in portables and so forth. One of the things that we've talked about is that there are students that are, that will be zone Liberty Creek that will be coming out of Howard and so forth. Will that then allow for some flexibility within that school to possibly make some shifts and so forth so that classrooms are not in portables? I know some of our schools still have them for, extracurricular activities or different, different purposes other than daily classroom instruction. Will that allow them to maybe do that and so that those students are not spending so much time in portables?
Yeah, so Ms. Andrews talks about the history, and all of you know the history of the portables. And we had roughly 70 or so back in 13, 14 that through the effort of the school board and the county commission, we were able to eliminate the use of those, especially as primary classrooms. We had some that we were using for after school and some other things that mainly was really a principal's choice about how to allocate space and programs. So we've eliminated that down to I think 5 or so across the county. We did have some, I think one at Jack Anderson and another one maybe that we let the PTO use, I think, and there may be others across the county. I know that one for sure. But to answer your question in a more direct way, I believe there will be space there once we do this change that things that have been allocated inside the building for use could be reallocated, and then all of those primary classes would be inside.
Another question. I know right now, specifically, excuse me, tonight we're discussing the zoning lines and so forth and how that, what those are going to look like. But I also know that when we did the zoning, there's a bug, for Burris, and even when we did the initial zone, the stage 1, that there were lots of questions. And I fully anticipate that again with this, just because change is hard, and then, okay, so what does that look like for me and my family, and so forth. And we did with those some FAQs. Will we be looking at doing that as well so that we can give that information to parents so that they kind of have a landing spot so that everybody's getting the same information, you know, when it comes down to start times and when's it going to open, what's it going to be,
Yeah.
what's...
I think
all
a
that.
little bit, one thing to help us with that, the principals already have a page set up for each of the Liberty Creek schools. And so I think parents can be, what we're thinking there, parents can get a lot of information from that source, and it kind of gets them in the groove of looking and you know, making sure they check that for information prior to the school even opening. And I don't know if you guys have been out there and looked at it or not, but Philip and Jason and Mary Dave have done a good job. But yes, I think we could probably develop an FAQ once we have enough information. Obviously, this move will set final zoning, and so people are going to be most concerned about the map. And obviously, we'll have the map posted and then put it there, but also on the district page, it's already up there with the meeting notice, but we'll make sure that it's on the opening scroll page so parents that are waiting to hear this decision will have the actual map so they can look and check. So I do think we probably, once we understand exactly what questions are being asked, we can develop the FAQ and then share it a couple of different ways that parents can get access to that information. Also think too, you know, that we're earlier probably with this final zone, November. I think we had previously done some of these types of things in January, if you remember, and I think November is a good time. It's early enough that you know, people know kind of what's coming.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hendricks. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is discussion and interaction regarding the revision to policy 4.6600, rating system upon first reading. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Duncan. Second by Ms. Hayes. Any discussion?
I do have a question.
Ms. Andrews.
Mr. Langford, do we need to do this as just this motion, then we can do it again in December? I know in December we have the EOCs. I'm not sure when they're scheduled in comparison to when our meeting will be. Will we need to waive the second reading?
Yeah, if we can waive the second reading, that'd be great, and we can go ahead and communicate it out to the schools.
Motion on the floor to
I modify my motion, Mr. Chair.
modify the motion to waive second reading.
That's correct.
And so you agree with the second, to waive second reading? Okay. All right. Mr. Daniels.
Yeah, just a quick question. I know we had some questions a little bit earlier in the evening. At our study session last week, or a couple weeks ago, Mr. Langford, you went through the changes and the reasons for them based on, you know, changes we've experienced over the past couple of years, obviously virtual learning and the other factors that played into this. Can you give a little bit of background into why we're making this change now and
Sure.
the reason that we've had to adjust it a couple of times, please?
Sure. So we went through because what had happened is over the last couple of years prior to COVID, we had hit, if you remember, we had hit a number of different challenges with the state delivering the TN Ready test, and we had gotten to where we had to make year-by-year determinations about how we were going to count the test, what the accountability measure was. Some years it was waived, some years it wasn't, and we had to do a lot of cleanup. But because of that, our grading system had become, it just become like there was a lot of extraneous information in there. We tried to go in July of 2020 and really clean it up and get it on par for what we were going to do. Of course, that was the summer that we were figuring out how we were going to manage COVID. And as the year started, if you remember, we sent a letter to the governor asking for a waiving of all tests and everything like that. Because we're on a 4x4 block schedule and our high school kids take EOCs, one of the things that the high school principals had asked to do is, we had a long time ago when testing first started, we had put a sliding scale on what the EOC would count, and we were about to enter a phase where it was going to count either 20 or 25%, and it also had an accounting for an exam that would have counted 15%. So we were looking at a grading scale where high school kids, 40% of their grade was going to come in the last 2 or 3 weeks of the semester. So meeting with high school principals, what we decided to do was, the EOCs come so close to the end of the semester. Like when we come back from Thanksgiving break, EOCs will start that week and run for 3 weeks. So they'll basically cover the last part of the semester. So, these tests are pretty rigorous. So making kids study for and take a test there for a big percentage of their grade and then turn around and take an exam for a big percentage of their grade. Talking to high school principals, we didn't think that was fair, so we split it. And so classes without an end-of-course test have a 15% exam. Classes with an EOC test, the EOC counts as 15%. All right, but if you remember last year, the state board came in, and because of the 4x4 block schedules, they waived accountability for schools and districts. We felt like it would be fair for our students to waive the accountability for them. The state board gave us the permission to do that last year because of block scheduling while waiting for the legislature to come in session into January. So we had to go in and put language for last year. This year we needed to come back and just reset our grading policy, which is pretty much what we've done. We did add in a little thing that in the event of test modifications or cancellations by the state of Tennessee, EOC subject grades will be calculated by averaging the first and second 9-week grades at 50% each. That way, if something happens and we don't get the test in a timely manner or something goes wrong, we don't have to have a special called meeting to try to clear it up. Because if we don't and something happens, we'll have some kids that they're passing or failing a class first semester will be dependent on that EOC grade. So it's better if we can just have all that cleared up. Some of the other things that were referenced is we didn't make any changes to elementary this year. Last year, if you remember, we moved standards-based report cards to kindergarten through 3rd grade and went to a, what we all grew up with, a regular grading system for 4th and 5th grade. One of the things, about study skills and behavior, I pulled a kindergarten report card just now while we were waiting, and part of what that means is used to, I don't know if any of you dealt with this. I didn't, but my brother did. He would frequently get a report card that had for behavior, it would say, talks too much or interrupts others. It was punitive and negative. So what we've tried to do is flip the language. So I'm looking at the kindergarten report card. It assesses them, respects and responds appropriately to peers and adults, completes assignments on time, puts forth best effort, works, plays, and shares cooperatively, attempts to solve problems before asking for help. So it's just, instead of saying talks too much, interrupts, gets out of seat, moves around a lot, things like that, it's trying to reinforce with students what our positive expectations for behavior are. It doesn't mean that we don't address behavioral issues, but it means that we start and we report the positives so that we're moving our kids towards a standard. But other than that, there were no changes to elementary. Middle school, if you remember, we didn't change anything in middle school because they didn't have TN Ready until the spring, and the legislature addressed that. So we were able to, the language that we put in elementary and middle school last year was the same that we added for high school this year. In the event that the test doesn't run or there are irregularities or problems, we can waive that locally and just do, the calculations are there. If you look at the policy, the 1, 2, and 3, like the 3 means meets expectations, it's detailed there underneath the policy of what it means. But really the only changes are the ones that are highlighted. The part that's crossed out is what we took out from last year, and the highlighted parts are what we're adding back in, which was actually pretty much what we had put in July 2020 and then took out in October to make it clear for what we were doing last year through the waiver process.
So just to kind of follow up on that, as you kind of read through the policy, there's a comment on here that says study skills and behavior marks shall not be considered when assessing a student for standards mastery. So when we talk about standards mastery, who determines what those standards are?
The state. The state determines the standards, and what that phrase means is that in the past in education, sometimes people were given, not in Sumner County as much, but in other places, kids were given grades for behavior. And what we wanted to do is your academic grades are based on your mastery of the standards put forward by the state of Tennessee in English, math, social studies, science, fine arts, PE, things like that, not because you sat still in class or didn't talk or were quiet during lunch.
And so when we talk about the standards mastery and the report card and how that's graded, I know I've got a 3rd grader and a 4th grader and other graders, a lot of graders. But my 3rd grader, she's been on kind of the standard-based report card her whole life. That's all she's known until next year when she kind of transitions out of that. And like I remember looking back at like her kindergarten report card, that some of those standards are things like can count to 10, right? And so these are things that, and the reason I asked about who made those up, who defined those standards, is that these aren't standards that we just sat around as a community and said, hey, we think this is important, this is important, this. We pull it from the state. The state's saying these are the things that we think are important, and what we're saying is when we help to coach a student, and that's really what these standards-based report cards are doing, is we try to coach them. It's saying, here's an area where you're struggling. You can't count 10 by yourself, so maybe work flashcards, right? And so I just wanted to kind of clarify that when we're talking about the standards-based report card, we're pulling those standards from the state, and then we're using the report cards to help the students know where there's learning gaps. So that parents can more easily understand that, I could look at this and say, oh, my kid's got a B in English, that means they're doing great. Well, if they're struggling with reading comprehension, I know Wrigley, my 4th grader, he's struggling on the test with being able not to read, but then actually process what he's reading and clarify and report back on what he sees and struggles there. But those are things that you can identify as you go through these standards base. These students know areas to focus on, and maybe even parents at their homes can find some ways to help them in conjunction with working with the teachers.
Yes, sir, and I think that the whole idea of a report card is a communication tool to parents. And I think that highlights it beautifully, because in the past, I've thought about, just to use myself as an example, I taught high school. Sometimes when I was putting things in a grade book, I might put, vocabulary test. Well, if a kid gets a 60 on a vocabulary test, the only way the parent can know what their child needs to work on is to email me and ask me, because all they can see in the grade book is vocabulary test or, English essay or essay number 1. It wasn't anything that I did intentionally. It's just that we weren't reflective on it because we were communicating directly with the student. In high school, that's probably more appropriate because you want your high school kids communicating. But as a parent, you still want to look and know what's going on. It's a lot easier as a parent to look at a report card or in the grade book and see, counting to 10, my child is at a 2, and we want them to get to a 3, which means that they're on the level or above the standard. So that's easy, and it creates conversation between the parent and the teacher to be able to email and say, hey, what is my child struggling with? And then it's like later on it might be fractions or something like that, and then it just creates a conversation point to understand exactly where your child is struggling or exceeding and doing well, so we can brag on them there, but then talk about ways that we can coach and help to move them up to the highest levels of the standards.
Well, and I think that coaching part's important. It makes me think of employee evaluations. I know when I'm filling one out for one of the individuals that I manage, or I have one filled out by my manager, if it just says 3 or 4, and you're like, well, what does that mean? There's space for them to provide a little bit of additional feedback, and I think that's what the standards-based report card does. It says, hey, here's an area you're good here, but you're struggling here. And that really helps the parents and the students, hopefully, in the long term. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels, Mr. Langford. Any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion on the floor is to approve and waive second reading. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is discussion and interaction regarding the 2022-2023 union calendar.
Motion to approve?
Motion approved by Mr. Daniels, second by Mr. Wise. Any discussion?
We're passing the calendar
Pass it out as we
around.
go.
I'm sorry I was late. I was supposed to pass that around earlier, so you had it when we got to this point. But I failed Mr. Langford.
Mr.
My
Daniels.
only task for
Oh,
him
I'm
tonight,
sorry.
I failed
Oh,
Mr.
you're
Langford.
right.
I know, it is hard to get good at.
I just wanted to mention as we approve this calendar, I know there's people that either watching online or sitting here and looking at the calendar. This is just for union. They're on the 9-2 schedule versus the 9-1. The 9-1's already been approved, and typically the process is once that's approved, Lance over at Union, the principal over at Union, Mr. Taylor, reviews that and then sets the schedule for Union Elementary School for the next year as well. So.
And if you know Mr. Taylor, you know that he has poured hours and hours over this, and this is the finest calendar produced in the state of Tennessee.
He may be a little bit OCD, yes.
All right, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is unfinished business discussion and interaction regarding the amendments to the general purpose budget. Most approved by Mr. Wise, second by Ms. Hayes. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item, discussion and interaction regarding amendments to the federal budget.
Motion approved. Second.
Motion approved, Mr. Wise, second by Mr. Gregory, I'm sorry. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is discussion of study session items. Mr. Johnson.
Just a reminder to everybody that we do not have a study session in December. Our next study session will be January, hang on, 4th? No. January 11th.
All right. There we go.
January 11th.
January 11th is next study session. And I'm sure that we'll have something to study, so you'll take care of that. All right. Next item on the agenda is communication from board members. How about starting with Mr. Wilkerson? You want to start, Mr. Wilkerson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. December the 10th, I'm having a right knee replacement. Just remember me on that day, and happy holidays.
Thank you, Mr. Wilkerson. Mr. Gregory?
It sure doesn't seem like a year since we were talking about Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Mr. Gregory. Mr. Wise?
It's good to-
Oh, is you not
this
done?
time of year to be with families, and I really feel like the calendar we approved for the week, because the feedback that I've gotten is very positive about the calendar. And maybe some of you may disagree with that, but the feedback that I have gotten, not only from my district, but other districts also. Have a great Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Mr. Gregory. Mr. Wise?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to commend the nutrition workers in our school district because last week I had 2 Thanksgiving lunches at White House Middle in the same day. Actually, didn't eat the second one, but anyway, I have 2 granddaughters at White House Middle, and their staff was awesome. Then the next day, I was fortunate enough to go to H.B. Williams for my grandson's Thanksgiving lunch, and that nutrition staff there was awesome as well. So, and I'm sure throughout the county. So I just want to give a shout out, if you will, to our nutrition department. A wonderful Veterans Day ceremony at White House High School as well. So with that, I wish all a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Mr. Wise, Mr. Daniels.
Yeah, Mr. Wise kind of commented on something I was going to mention. There are numerous Veterans Day programs throughout our county over the last week, and that's always a highlight. You know, it's great when our schools are able to bring in veterans from World War II on up in many cases, and let them see these individuals that really helped position our country where it is today, those that bled for our country, and to honor them and see those individuals and really celebrate those individuals is a great opportunity for our students, and another great opportunity in a way for our schools to connect with our community. So kudos to all the schools that offer those events.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels. Ms. Hawkins.
I was pleased to see, actually, on the internet today, that the Green Wave Deli opened, and that is a program for special ed students to prepare foods, and they shop, they plan, and they sell their deli items to staff in the school, and they were having a blast, and it was just so refreshing to see that. I wish everyone a very happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Ms. Hawkins. Mr. Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too would like to brag on the Veterans Day programs. I was able to attend the one at T.W. Hunter Middle School, which was totally planned and put on by the student council. Now, I'm sure they had some guidance from the administration, but those kids put on a great program. They even wore red, white, and blue shirts. They set in such an order that the stands made the United States flag. It was a wonderful touch with the band, the chorus. It was just a special, special thing. It's a special treat for our family. We attend that every year. So that was exciting, and want to give them a shout out. Also, want to let everybody know how exciting we are at Beach about the new turf on our baseball field. It's going to be spectacular come spring. While we're on athletics, we do have a game Friday night. It is against Hendersonville. So if you want to see a good football game, come on out Friday night, 7 o'clock. We're playing at Hendersonville, so they actually may have a chance. So we'll give it a 50-50 chance on that game. Again, I'd like to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving, and appreciate the time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. Ms. Andrews.
Yeah, just echo everything that's already been said, obviously. I have to say, like, the veterans programs are just special. And I love how each school kind of has its own personality, its own take, and how they do that. I love that is something special that our kids get to partake in. I also want to mention the Midget family. They've just been on my heart today. This is the anniversary of Coleman's death, which, having a teenage driver, I love that kid. Having a teenage driver and the time change scares me to death. So if we just remember our students during this season of just, it's just that weird, like all of a sudden it seems like it turns dark, and just remember them, and just for their safety and so forth. It's exciting times. It's playoff football, which is actually where Coleman was headed that night. It's family Thanksgivings, it's Christmas, it's all those fun activities and time that they're getting out of school. I mean, they'll all be out of school for a week next week, and so forth. So we'll just remember our students and their safety.
Thank you, Ms. Andrews. Ms. Bachman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to echo what we've been said tonight about the nutrition ladies. I was able to have the honor to serve at Station Camp this week for Thanksgiving, Station Camp Elementary, and in a matter of 2 days they served 2,000 meals. So it's a big shout out to them. I also want to give my appreciation for the Veterans Day program. My husband and my daughter both were honored at Burris this year, and my husband again over at Ellis. So they appreciate that very much. There's one thing that I want, if I have a moment, like the nutrition ladies, but I also want to give a shout out to our bus drivers. They are never mentioned, but this is something that a friend of mine shared on Facebook. Maybe some of you had seen it. It said, if you don't know someone personally that drives a school bus, let me introduce you. Bus drivers get up crazy early. They make sure the bus is safe for the students to pick up and take home. They have their head in a swivel for 6+ hours a day, watching out for the millions of other drivers who can't see the big yellow bus or the students crossing the road. They carry the safety of all students on their shoulders. They are so much more. They tie shoes, they fix zippers and backpacks, pick up spilled lunches, or clean up a sick tummy mess. They care deeply, forms bonds of trust, set expectations, and give praise. Show concern and empathy, enjoy the silly jokes, worry about the sadness on faces, miss an absent child, or mourn who moved without a word. Prays for them, laughs with them, hurts with them, just to get up and do it again the next day. Many people don't realize how emotional, stressful, consuming, and rewarding it is. What a privilege it is to be a school bus driver. Huge shout out to my fellow brothers and sisters that care enough, are brave enough, and can love enough to do this job. Thank you. I don't know the author of this. Her name is Loretta Lovelace Pullins, and this was shared by a friend of mine, and I thought I wanted to share it with you tonight. So, wish you all a happy Thanksgiving. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bachman. Ms. Hayes.
Yes. Thank you, Chairman Brower. We have a distinguished guest in our midst tonight. Mr. David Brown. Would you stand, please? Mr. David Brown is a former school board member for
I'll take a little nap over there.
16, I know. Wake up, Mr. Brown.
You get to be 85, you'll take naps.
Well, and we appreciate the years.
For all your service.
Well,
You're doing well.
and yours. You laid the groundwork with a team of others, and we greatly appreciate you and glad you're here. Thank you, Mr. Brown. A few weeks ago, I was able to attend the Merrill Hyde Magnet School Paideia seminar. Saw Mr. Bennett there. That is always so fun and just so stimulating. I mean, their whole premise, and you can maybe even expound on this, but the whole premise of the school is the Paideia seminar. It's if you want to see civil discourse done beautifully and the way it should be done, grown-ups need to go and see how to do it. I sat in on the 4th and 8th graders with the U.S. Constitution seminar. They are brilliant. They are brilliant. Grounded, solid. It's just, there were so many rooms you could go and visit and hear different topics. There's been a couple of times in the past I participated in that. You might get, it was the U.S. Constitution. I've been there when they've done the Martin Luther King speech, his, and also Robert F. Kennedy, after his brother died, that he gave the speech. And it was just, we get to break it down and discuss and ideas, and we can agree to disagree. It's beautiful. Merrill Hyde, they're doing a phenomenal job. I have seen that kind of thing in our other schools, in the high schools, from kindergarten through 12th, where the facilitator is the teacher, and these kids are able to, in a safe place, discuss, agree to disagree, add their input, and they do it so beautifully, so beautifully. Like I said, needs to be a class in that for people that are supposed to be the adults in the room. Fall sports are just going great. Sumner County has been represented beautifully. going into the playoffs, sorry, Andy, going into the playoffs,
We won a playoff game.
yes, you did. Yes, but last week you did. So, it's gonna be interesting this Friday night. So it's a big crowd and, it's just, don't you just love sports, competing? And our kids do that really well. They're good sports. We've got some great athletes. Our cheer squads have done great. Last weekend, the cheer squads have done, I see you messing with me, have done a great job, winning state awards, and the dance teams winning state awards. I just ask that you be praying for the Campbell family in Hendersonville. Pat Campbell, alderman in Hendersonville. He died this morning. So pray for Lori and their children and their grandchildren, their family. My husband was over there late morning, and ministry is already happening and loving on that family. Pat's just a great leader. He loves Hendersonville. He's an HHS graduate, invested in the community, and we are going to greatly miss him. And I know you have to have your head in a hole if you have not seen that, which I think the Amber Alert just came out today. One of our teachers in Sumner County, the little boy, Noah, and is her grandson. We need to find those babies. So it's all over. It's been on the news, and now officially an Amber Alert, which will across the nation. Many of you have even probably shared that on your Facebook or Instagram to find those babies. We're just praying for their family and that they soon be found. Have a blessed Thanksgiving, everyone.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes. A lot of good comments tonight that I agree with. It's been my custom as for years and years to take this time of year and make my vow that I will still watch my schoolboy figure and not eat all Mama's pecan pie and things like that, to which I failed miserably. So I expect no difference in this year. I do look forward to next year when the board decides, Ms. Andrews, that we can go start eating at our cafeterias again, because as y'all mentioned how wonderful it is, I enjoy that. So let's get that. Good deal. That'll be great. That'll be great. Well, I hope you all have a blessed Thanksgiving. Mr. Wise, you want to say something?
If you don't mind, I meant to mention it a while ago, but this is also the time of the year, and this is the time of the year that schools are having book fair. And I know communities are stepping up, but we have some children, especially elementary children, that cannot participate in book fair. I would like to see us as a school system, as senior leadership of our school system, to, I don't want to say require, but strongly suggest that principals at each school make sure that, you know, they get a part of the budget to use at their discretion. I would like to make sure that each principal has a really good idea of how much money he or she needs to hold out of that, to make sure that each child can participate in book fair. It's an exciting time for the child. I know I've gone to several of them, and they're just all over the place. They love it. So I would love to see no child left out of book fair. Thank you.
All right. And finishing my comment, hope you all have a blessed Thanksgiving, and we are adjourned.